Even if it is a mental illness, which it's not.
It is, though. Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Laurel, and I'm a former trans woman. I transitioned in the year 2017 and had gender confirmation surgery in 2019. I lived 6 years as a woman before having a sudden awakening to the realities of gender identity and what causes a person's gender identity to form. When I realized this, I questioned everything about myself, and I changed my whole life to return to living back as the man I was born as. And for the first time in my 43 years of life, I love myself as a man, and it's amazing. And I feel so happy and confident in life in a way that I never could, especially not when I was defying my own biology and trying to live life as a woman. So I welcome you to this channel where I will discuss trans issues and detrans issues. Thank you for watching. In this video, I want to respond to my very first YouTube video where I announced that I was trans. March 15th, 2018 is when I posted this video. And I just wanted to respond to it. I have not watched this video ever since I posted it. And so I don't know what it's going to trigger in me, what things are going to come up. So we'll see how this goes. As a trans person, especially as a new trans person, you feel the need to explain yourself and to explain that you were born this way. So please just accept me for being who I am trying to be, or who I believe myself to be. And it's a real interesting position to be in, and I'm sure that in this video I probably do a lot of explaining myself. So this is probably the first of many videos. I am trans. Have been my whole life. Don't want to go through the whole story right now. I just wanted to share some thoughts. I only just came out as trans last year. Last July is when I started on hormones. I've been taking female hormones for 8 months now. 8 months mark happened yesterday. For a long time, I felt uncomfortable going out like this. Yeah. So some thoughts initially. It's weird to see myself back then in this new exploration of gender expression. I, of course, up to this point had lived my whole life believing that I was really female inside, which was what led to this whole thing. But this was shortly after I began presenting as female. And it was still so new to me, and I can see I still have the facial hair. My mustache is kind of showing in this video. I had a lot of laser hair removal on my face in order to try to get rid of that, to get rid of the natural male hair that grows on a biological male's face. I knew right when I met you I would never be the same, but I let you take me over, girl, so I'm the one to blame, yeah. And it was one of the battles I fought with in trying to be trans, is to get rid of that stupid facial hair that I hated so much, that made it obvious I was male. It's sad, all the money, time, and pain I went through to try to change my body to be something that aligned more with my insides, when all along it would have been far better for all involved for me to change the internal dialogue, to learn to love myself how I was, rather than go through all these hormonal changes and surgeries and things to attempt to change the exterior to match the interior. And the trans ideology is that your interior is what it is, your beliefs, your identity is what it is, and we need to change the exterior to match that in order for you to be happy. As if that's the answer. It's like not being happy with your car, that your car is blue, so you put a different engine in it, trying to make yourself happier about the color of your car. You change something fundamental, the fundamental structural part of your vehicle, just because there's a part of it that you don't like. It's crazy. Let's continue.
I would put my hair on and maybe some makeup on, and I would feel just like I was a man with long hair and makeup on. I would look at myself in the mirror, look at myself in pictures, and I'd think, you are a man that's trying to look like a woman. And I hated that. It made my, if you're familiar with what dysphoria means, gender dysphoria, it made it so much worse. Because it would remind me that you are a man, whether you like it or not.
That is the truth. I was a man, whether I liked it or not. I was born male. And that's okay. I didn't need to change that. What I needed to change was this internal belief that it wasn't okay to be a man. And now I have. And life is so much better. And I wish that other trans people could realize that you don't have to chase this never-ending path of trying to make your body match your insides. The real answer is to make your insides match the reality that you were born into. Because the only reason your insides differ from your reality is because of your past, your experiences that made you believe the way you do now. On we go.
But something interesting has happened in just the past couple weeks. Being on hormones for 8 months, and a shift has happened. I don't know if my face has finally responded to the hormones just enough to where I feel good about myself. Obviously my voice still is an issue for me. I actually feel more comfortable going out like this than I do as a guy. It is the weird...
More comfortable going out in my feminine expression. That was a weird time. Because here's the thing. When you're trans, you know that you're going against the stream. You know that society doesn't accept you, and that's part of the anxiety we have to begin with. Is because we know that in order to live what we feel is true to our inner identity, that we are defying what the majority of people expect from us. Defying your gender is going against the norm, and you can naturally expect to get pushback for that. In the world we live in, people have their opinions, people have their religious beliefs that they will hold on to so strongly that they will even kill people for their religious beliefs and feel justified in it. Belief is a very strong thing, and as a trans person, you know as you're going out in public that people are not really accepting you as normal. And so I had to force myself into a certain level of cognitive dissonance, where I had to ignore the looks I would get. I had to just go out and live life. And it did reach a point where I had been doing it enough, and with the female hormones, whatever played into it all, it was all in my head, all a belief, right? And so there was a lot of complexity that played into me arriving at this place to live as a woman and to make myself go out in public as a woman because I knew I needed to. Otherwise, I would just be depressed and lonely and in seclusion all the time. I knew I had to get used to going in public, and so I made myself. And eventually it got to where it shifted to where I was comfortable. I was never actually comfortable, though. I say that because I had to arrive there. I had to claim to myself, lie to myself, tell myself I'm comfortable presenting this way out in the world, even though it totally felt wrong. It felt right to certain parts of me, but the reality was I was defying my biology and doing so in a world that expects a gender binary, because that's what exists, male and female. Anything else is made up in the mind.
This thing. Because literally, when I get up in the morning and I go to put my clothes on and I go somewhere, instead of there for a long time I struggled with, oh, but I really want to dress up. I really want to put my hair on. I really want to look good today. I want to feel like the girl I feel like. But then I'd struggle with it. I'd tell myself, no, people are going to think you look weird. I just wasn't quite ready to do it. I wasn't quite ready to make that step. But then recently, all of a sudden, it just switched. I look at myself in the mirror and I said, that is a girl looking back at me. Even though I'm not stupid, I recognize that I still look like a man. I know that. I know this. And it's very hard. I still have male parts that bother me really, really bad. My voice is still low. But that doesn't matter. That's what really changed for me. For one, to look at myself and actually see a girl. It is incredible to me. You have no idea, because when you live with this your entire life, just feeling like you're living a lie, like you're being forced to live a lie. It sucks. It's not fun. It is not a fun way to live, but you do it.
I'm forced to live a lie. My mind was forcing me to live a lie in this video. And during the 6 years that I was living that way, that was a lie. It wasn't a lie to parts of myself. Obviously, there were parts of myself that truly, genuinely believed with everything I was that this was a good thing and that this was what I needed to do to be happy and to succeed in life, whatever that means, to feel safe and secure in life. I needed to live this way.
You survive. You live your life. You get up in the morning and you put that button-up shirt on and those jeans on and your work boots on, and you go work your manly job driving your logging truck like I used to do. That's what you do because it's just expected of you. It's just what you're expected to do. Because you are a man. You're born male, you better stick with it. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by my own face on the phone because I feel like I look like a woman sitting here talking to my phone, and it is the weirdest thing for me, and it's so happy. It is so incredibly happy, you have no idea. The greatest happiness you have ever experienced in your life, and it's probably 10 times greater than that.
I do remember that feeling, and it was an amazing euphoric feeling. When you genuinely, honestly feel like you were meant to be female, and you finally have been taking hormones long enough that it's making the changes to you, and you've been dressing as female and living life like a woman for however long I was at this point when I made this video, it felt absolutely incredible. And that feeling, sitting there recording that video when I kept seeing myself in the video on the screen of my phone, and I actually thought I was kind of attractive. If I saw myself out in public, I would think, wow, she's kind of cute. Because, and I don't know how much of that played into it. You know, there's this term autogynephilia that apparently means when you're like sexually turned on by yourself, or sexually turned on by the thought of you being a woman or dressing as a woman. And there are certain aspects to that, but it doesn't really feel in total alignment with what my experience was, because I was still always attracted to females, to women, but I felt like I was supposed to be a woman myself. And so an interesting thing happened when I transitioned and would look in the mirror and actually be happy with how I looked. And that's not true for all trans people. A lot of trans women will still look in the mirror after having all these surgeries and being on hormones for many years and still feel like I'm just not happy with how I look. Whereas I was legitimately happy with how I looked. I didn't feel a need to get facial feminization surgery because I was living as a woman. Everywhere I went, I was just accepted into women's circles, women's groups, because I carry with me a loving attitude, a loving personality, a loving energy. I don't demand attention or demand space. I would just kind of fit in to these women's spaces without making any noise or anything. And so I felt mostly just content. I had looked into vocal surgery because my voice was always one of the things that bothered me the most. But luckily, I was scared away from doing that. So glad I didn't.
I don't know how to describe it necessarily. But imagine living your whole life knowing that you are something different than what you are. Knowing that inside you are not what is manifest externally.
Believing you are.
You are not the clothes you're expected to wear. You are not the short hair you're expected to have. Inside, you're this. And it's so hard when you have facial hair that doesn't match the way you feel. And I guess my purpose for this video, I want people to understand where I'm coming from, where trans people like myself are. I want you to understand that we're not some weirdos. I mean, I'm kind of a weirdo sometimes. But it's not because I have some crazy mental illness that makes me want to dress up like this and go out and flaunt myself. That's not what it's about. It is literally about being myself. It is about being myself.
That's what you think.
I've been being someone else. People say, oh, you're dressing up as a woman. No, I am not dressing up as a woman. I have been dressing up as a man my entire life. That's what you need to understand. And you say, but why? Why were you? Because it was expected of me. It was expected to dress that way.
Well, yeah. You are male. You were born male. You've lived 30-something years of your life as male. Of course it's expected that you follow the standard that's been established for thousands of years. Male, female. It's only recently that we've got this weird idea that you can just up and change your gender if you're not happy with who you are. That's a recent thing. That's new. Trans people have been around forever, yes, but there's a difference between trans people who recognize that they were born one gender and live as the other gender, compared to those of us who developed this actual belief that we legitimately were the opposite gender living in the wrong body. It's wild.
And you try to fight it. Once in a while you say, okay, I'm gonna wear a skirt to church one Sunday. I did that. I was not even begun on my transitioning journey at all. It was like 10 years ago or something. And I knew that I was drawn to girly things. That's what this is, because I am literally female inside. So that's what you have to remind yourself. Those of you who are trying to comprehend what this is, what it means, what is being trans, what does it mean? Those of you who are trying to comprehend that, you need to just try your hardest to get in your mind, regardless of what I look like, regardless of what I sound like, think of me as a girl. In fact, something you could do is even go back to my old pictures of when I was very much looking like a man with my beard and facial hair and everything. If you were to go back and look through those pictures and everyone say she and her. Refer to me as a she and her in your own mind, just for yourself. She, her.
How?
Every picture you look at, that's a she, that's a her, it's a girl, it's a female, it's a woman. When you do that, I have to do it for myself, believe it or not. I look at old pictures of myself and I was a guy. I really wasn't. I never was. That's what you have to understand about being transgender. It's not like all of a sudden a person decides, oh, I don't like being a guy anymore. I don't like being a girl anymore. I'm going to change myself to be what I really want to be.
There it is.
No, it's that I've always been this way. I've always been this person. It's just that now I'm finally able to let it out. I'm finally able to be this person externally that I've always been internally. Another thing that confuses the hell out of people is looking back on the life of a transgender person and all the masculine things they were involved in.
Yeah.
I was involved with a lot of masculine stuff. I loved my guns. Loved them. I don't really have any anymore. If you transition, you don't all of a sudden completely eliminate everything from your past that you liked. You still have a lot of the same likes. I still love working on cars. I'm in the middle of rebuilding a 6.4 power stroke diesel engine right now. I put all new pistons and bearings and things in it. It's just what I love to do. Right? Say,
because you're a man and because you grew up doing those things, the same reason that I love working on cars and trucks and things is the same reason I became trans. Meaning that it's an identity that is formed over the course of your life. Right? So any personality trait, any hobby, any desires that we have in our life, the only reason we have those is not because it's innate to our identity, but because our identity and our desire to do certain hobbies formed over the course of our lifetime as we identified that certain things gave us a feeling. It gave me a feeling of happiness, a feeling of joy, of safety. So then for the rest of your life, you continue to try to seek that feeling again. And a trans person is doing just that, constantly trying to seek a feeling that we identified at some point in our past, and we've aligned it somehow with that we live as the opposite gender, then that is satisfying that feeling. And it kind of does for a while.
That's not something typically that a girl would do. Well, how dare you, for one? That's very sexist. Girls can do anything a guy can do. It's just that society has programmed them to live in a different role.
But should they? Should they, though? And that's one of the questions. If you're a girl and you're into manly things, there's nothing wrong with that. The only reason we even call things manly things is because we've watched how societies work, how people work, how men typically gravitate towards those things that we tend to call manly things. Women typically gravitate naturally towards more nurturing, caretaking things. It's not because that's what you should be doing. It's not because that's what it means to be a man or woman. It's, again, a belief that our society has programmed into us, that this is what it means to be a man, this is what it means to be a woman, and then as human beings, we spend our lives trying to align with whatever we've identified as meaning man or woman. If I feel like I'm a woman, then I have in my mind this certain checklist of things that it means to be a woman, and therefore, in order to show up in the world as much of a woman as possible, I will mentally try to check off each of those boxes to achieve what it means to be a woman, whether it's my voice, how I walk into a room, how I present myself. It's all part of the whole game of trying to seek this feeling of safety and security that we've identified we want, and we just happen to have identified being the opposite gender as the answer to that feeling.
But anyway, the things that I love to do, they don't change, but they kind of evolve as I come more into myself as the girl that I've always felt I was, the woman that I've always felt I was. Now that I'm getting to finally express myself, my true self, and I'm not dressing up right now. This is me. This is who I really am. And it's hard because society doesn't accept that. There's so many people that just don't get it. They don't understand what this is. And this is what my purpose is in trying to share with people what this is. So you can understand. When you look back at my life...
Because you gotta understand.
You know, I was born a boy. I really wasn't. That's what you have to remind yourself. I was born a girl that happened to have a penis and happened to be raised like a boy my whole life.
No, you were born a boy.
I was born a girl. I was born a girl.
No, you weren't. No.
Not physically, obviously. Physically, I was born with the male parts, sadly.
You were born biologically male.
Very much. Naturally, I went towards things that matched my identity as a guy. Psychologically, however that happens, it's a really weird thing. I gravitated towards, I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. At about 9 years old, I decided I wanted to fly helicopters. Now, I did not think of myself as a boy that wanted to fly helicopters. I always knew I was a girl inside. And I was drawn towards these things as the female I felt I was, but because I was physically male, it seemed normal, it seemed to match. Okay, he wants to do that. So I started flying helicopters. At 14 years old, I had my first flight lessons, put it on hold for a while, realized I was too young, came back to it in my early 20s, got my commercial helicopter pilot's license. I am a licensed commercial helicopter pilot. I don't fly now because I don't have enough flight hours to actually get a job. That's the really hard part. Also, I bought a logging truck at 18 years old. My very first job was working for myself, self-employed, in an industry that is about as masculine as you can possibly get. 99% of the people, of the loggers out there are men. There are some women out there, badass woman loggers, but 99% of them are men, and they're very sexist, masculine men. You can...
Yes, this was the environment I worked in. Imagine having an internal belief that you are female, but working in an industry that is hyper masculine, around all these men that, if they were to know... I mean, I used to have fantasies of being able to go to work as my log truck driving female self. I always wanted to have long, beautiful hair and still drive my logging truck and show up in the log landing as my female self and tie my load of logs down and take off with it. I wanted that because I identified so much internally with this belief that I was born female in a male body. And so I spent my whole life seeking after that, my whole life trying to reach whatever that was, that feeling that I had that was driving me towards being a woman. Okay, continuing.
Imagine me working around that environment. I'd hear them make these jokes about women, sexist comments about women and things, and naturally me, looking like a man, I'm standing there looking like a man.
Because you are a man.
And they're thinking they're talking to a man about women, but they're really talking to a woman about women, and it's really hard. It's really hard to have to stand there and feel the need to defend women, but then you're stuck having to work in an industry that would very quickly kick you out for being different.
Yeah.
I was not in a safe place to come out my entire life.
No.
Yeah, I can say with pretty fair certainty that I would not have had a good childhood growing up had I come out when I was younger. Hopefully my family would have come around or something, and hopefully things would have been okay, maybe?
No.
I don't know.
No.
All I know is I felt the very strong need to never ever let that be known, that I felt like I was a girl. I thought for years that it was just weird, that I was this weirdo, this just had this weird thing about me, that I was drawn to girly things and that I felt like I was a girl inside, but that's just weird. That is so weird.
I honestly did. I believed that I was the only person on the entire planet that felt this way. I was a homeschooled Mormon kid, was not exposed to a whole lot, and especially not what it was to be transgender. Imagine that, growing up with this weird sense that you are the wrong gender, or that you're a different gender and in the wrong body, but you have no way to explain it. You don't tell anybody this. If anybody found out I had these weird feelings going on in me, I was afraid I'd be put in a mental hospital for the rest of my life, because that's just weird. And so I crushed it. I hid it. I never told anybody about it. Like a lot of trans kids, they grow up in a society where it's so presented to them as an answer to their lack of happiness or insecurities or whatever, that these groups and things in our kids' schools, there are LGBT groups that present to your children this concept of transition, of taking hormones, and your kids see their peers in school transitioning and living as the opposite gender, and it seems so fun and exciting and new, and oh, maybe that's an answer for me too. So then we have all these kids jumping on the bandwagon, trying to follow along. It's not because they don't even actually identify as trans to begin with, but the idea is put into their head. They're exposed to it, and then it becomes a belief that gets built upon as they toss it around in their mind to try to make sense of who they really are. And eventually they come to the conclusion that, oh, I guess I need to transition. I need to start hormones. And this is what happens to so many young people nowadays. I grew up in a different world where I was not exposed to the concept of being trans. Had I been early on in my life, I would have known, oh, okay, this explains why I feel the need to wear girls' clothes all the time. This is why I'm so drawn to feminine things and feel like I'm legitimately a girl trapped in a boy's body. It's scary to think what might have happened if early on in my life I had been exposed to the concept and exposed to the path of transition as if it was an answer. Luckily, it wasn't early in my life. I did this later in my life when I was in my late 30s, and now I'm 43. But it was a crazy thing to grow up in a world where I had no idea of anything else. Even though I had the internet, I could never find any answers as to why I felt like a girl. It made no sense to me. Why can't I not find any answers to what I'm experiencing? But when I did, and I found out that I was one of actually thousands of other people in the world that felt the way I did, and I read their stories and they aligned with how I felt, I thought, finally, an answer, and there's a potential path. I can transition, I can take female hormones and become the female I feel like I am, and then get surgery, and I did. I followed the whole path. Didn't get facial feminization surgery, I didn't get vocal cord surgery, thank God. And it made that, of course, I'm very grateful for, that now all I'm missing is my penis and testicles, which is a huge tragedy, and I have a lot of grief about that, but I am so lucky that that is something that can't be seen. So I can go back to living as a man now, and everybody just accepts me as a man. I don't get... See, the problem with some, like, trans men who decide to detransition, or even trans women who decide to transition after they've gone through facial feminization surgery and breast surgery and everything, now they have a body that is somewhat feminine, has female features to it, but they're still a man. And then they realize, oh shit, I am still a man, and I should go back to living as a man, but now I've done all this to my body. Me, I miss my penis and my testicles, but at least people don't see that. So I can go out in public now and not have people looking at me weird. They just accept me as a man, and it's the most amazing thing to finally, for the first time in my 43 years of life, be able to accept myself as a man and love myself as a man, and go out into the world and be called sir and he, him, and just have it be normal. and not have it trigger me all the time. I lived in a constant state of being triggered every time someone opened their mouth. Even when people would call me she, I would hear them call me she, and inside I'd be like, whoa, wow, that's interesting. They call me she. I do identify with a she, but that's interesting that they're defying their own knowing that I am male and making themselves call me a she so it makes me comfortable. That's noble of them to make that effort to properly gender me, whatever that means. But I am so happy that I can just be called he and him and sir now, and it's normal, and I can just live as a man, that I didn't have to have my breast implants removed. Continuing.
It can't be real. That's your own feelings. You just ignore that. And so I would revert to the masculine things. Like I said, drove my logging truck. I owned multiple logging trucks over the years. I did all my own mechanical work on them, changed tires on them and everything. I was a very manly man. Very manly, man-looking woman, actually. That's what I was. And that's what I want everybody to understand. Everybody who listens to this, I want you to understand that it is not that all of a sudden last year I decided I wasn't happy being a man. That is not what it is.
No.
No. Not at all. I am a woman. I have always been a woman. I was born a girl. I just happened to have male parts when I was...
You hear that? Those of you who say that because I'm detrans now that I never was actually transgender. Do you hear me explain how I honestly felt I was female inside? And you want to tell me that I wasn't really transgender and that's why I detransitioned? No. I detransitioned because I realized that my belief that I was trans, or my belief that I was actually a female inside, is no different than any other trans person's belief. Everybody is unique. Everybody had their own unique experiences that caused them to develop a trans belief. But the fact is, it is a belief, and every single trans person got there through a sequence of events and memories and experiences and perspectives that caused them to arrive at that belief. You were not born that way. I was convinced with everything I was that I was legitimately born that way. But then there's the question of how much did I actually believe that, as opposed to how much I was trying to profess that to make it okay and normal what I was doing to myself.
Born and was raised as a boy and was drawn towards certain masculine things growing up, but I was always very drawn to feminine things and girly things. I used to watch the Disney Channel in my 20s. I'm a 20-something-year-old man watching the Disney Channel, listening to Disney music and things. Does that seem normal? Especially a man that drives a logging truck and... Am I not...
It was pretty funny, because here I was, this very manly man, driving a logging truck, and I'd pull into the lumber mill, blasting Radio Disney, because the fun, cute, playful stuff, it always appealed to me. I always wanted to produce Disney Channel TV shows, because there was something wholesome about them that I just loved, and I was drawn to them, and perhaps that played into the confusion of me feeling like I was a female, and it was just normal to like stuff like that. So my whole life was just filled with these weird confusions, these things that I was drawn to that didn't make sense because of this internal belief I had that I was the opposite gender. And now living in a world where I am a man for the first time in my life, and it's okay, and I'm content with that, the whole world around me changed. Because your perspective, every one of us is living our life in the present moment, looking through all of these lenses from our past experiences, and therefore we're seeing basically a clouded image in front of us as we sit here in any given situation everything we perceive that other people are doing or saying, or what it means to be who we are, all of that is affected by all of these lenses we're wearing from every past experience we had. And so I arrived at a place, clearly, where I was looking at life through so many lenses from my past experiences, lenses that happened to change the field of view so much, or to such an extent, that it caused me to gravitate towards this feeling that I must be female inside. All because of my life experiences, my childhood, and the perspectives I developed over the course of my life. Not because I was born that way. And I had to insist over and over again that I was born this way.
It wouldn't be necessarily normal or age appropriate for my age as a female at that time, but I'm not necessarily drawn towards age appropriate things for my age now either. I'm 37 years old, but I see the color of my fingernails, I tend to be drawn towards younger things because I'm in this weird state right now. I feel like a teenage girl.
Yeah, that is an interesting part of being trans. I grew up desperately missing what I saw little girls experiencing, okay? Like getting to go to Disneyland in your princess dress and twirling around in your dress and having your dolls and everything. I felt like I missed out on life. I felt like I fundamentally was missing out on a certain very important part of life. Like, for example, when I graduated high school, I was doing it through a charter school, so I didn't get a graduation. And I graduated early too, so I wasn't invited to the graduation ceremony. And this has caused me to live my entire life feeling like I missed out on an important part of life, an important rite of passage that everybody goes through. You walk across the stage, you get handed your diploma, you move the tassel to the other side, and you graduated. It's a huge achievement in people's lives. And many people don't graduate. They either drop out of high school or whatever, but I was there for it. I wanted that part of life. I wanted to be that normal person that got my diploma on the stage, and I didn't. And so, being trans, growing up a boy, you identify that there's all these things that you didn't get to do as a child. You didn't get to wear your cute little dresses and clothes and play with your dolls and be treated more kindly, if that was your perspective. Many people have the perspective that girls get treated worse, and therefore, if they were born a girl, they want to be a boy because they perceive that they would get treated better, they would get more love, they would feel happier. It's all a belief. Every time. Every single time. It's always a belief that was programmed in the past, and therefore it can change. It can change at any time. You can suddenly have a new shift in perspective that makes you realize you were living a lie all this time. That you aren't really that person, that you're really the person underneath all of your programming. And true happiness and contentment and safety comes from learning to love that person, not who you think you have to become. Okay, it's actually a few hours later now because the battery in my camera died, and all of my camera's batteries were dead, and I had to charge one first, so back to the video.
Literally. A teenage girl that's coming into herself, coming into her beauty, discovering who she is, and wanting to experiment with new outfits and jewelry and things. That's what I feel like right now, because it's the most amazing thing to finally get to live my life that I never got to live. And so the reason I'm drawn towards younger things is because I feel like I missed out on that part of my life.
Yeah.
I missed out on getting to be that little girl that got to be in ballet and go to slumber parties at her friend's house and things. I missed all of that. I did not get to experience all that, but I wanted it because I was a girl growing up.
No,
That's
you
why I was
weren't.
drawn towards those things. When my sister would have slumber parties and things, I was so jealous. I felt like I should have been involved. As a girl, not as a boy involved, but as a girl involved.
Because I had a belief. A belief.
Because that's what I was drawn towards. Because I felt like it would be normal. One of the things that transgender people want,
Normal.
all I want, is to be able to live my life. To be happy. When I get up in the morning and I get dressed, All I want is to live my life. I don't want to be trans. I don't want to get attention. I don't dress like this to go out in public and, oh, look, people are looking at me.
No.
I don't like when people look at me like I'm weird.
If that was the case, I would have been wearing a lot more exotic clothing. You know, that was the thing that always confused me about drag queens. I was aware of drag queens, even though I was not aware that transgender people existed, even though I was one. I knew drag queens existed, and when I saw a drag queen totally done up with this wild, crazy, colorful hair and crazy makeup and stuff, and I said, that is someone who wants to be seen. That is someone who wants attention. They are doing that for the attention. Look at me. Look at all this makeup and stuff I put on to make me look this way. Whereas for me, all I wanted was to live a normal life as the girl I thought I was. So I wasn't trying to put on this female costume. I thought that by dressing as a female that I was legitimately being true to my true identity, who I really was inside. And I wasn't doing it to get attention. I wasn't doing it to get people to look at me. I would dress as conservative as I felt was necessary to draw as little attention to myself as possible. I like to dress cute and just in femme clothes, but not overly out there, drag queen type. Continuing.
But at the same time, I don't care anymore. I used to care. I used to allow that to keep me from living true to myself. I don't anymore. Like today, I got up. I had a therapy appointment to go to. I said, you know what? I feel better this way now. I feel like I finally get to be myself. I'm not gonna go as a guy. So I put a little makeup on, put my hair on, and I went out like this.
Here's a look at your commute.
Because it feels right. It feels normal. Like this is what's supposed to happen. When I get up in the morning, this is how I'm supposed to look. This is how I'm supposed to look all day, every day. I want to live my life like this every day because it is what feels right. Not because I'm drawn to some weird kink or something. That is not what it's about. It is about truly, honestly, in my heart, feeling like I am a female.
Yep.
And wanting to live that way all the time. And getting to live this way lately has brought such incredible happiness to me that you have no idea. It's like freedom, just this amazing sense of feeling and happiness, well-being that just comes over me and makes me feel so amazing. For the longest time I struggled with it because the hormones hadn't quite had an effect yet. Just like girls don't all of a sudden hit puberty and become a woman all of a sudden. Girls go through this growing process. Us trans girls do the same thing. You start taking the hormones. It's been 8 months that I've been taking them regularly, all day, every day, and only recently, like I said, there are still things about my face that are masculine. I don't like the way my chin sticks out. I don't like certain angles. Don't look good. So I specifically try to take pictures from angles that capture my feminine features, just because it makes me feel better about myself to look at those pictures and say,
Yep.
okay, we are making progress.
Yep.
Things are going good. But what's happened recently with the HRT and it having effects on me as it has, just recently after 8 months, the eyes are where you notice the biggest change.
The eyes.
If I look at pictures of myself from before, my eyes just look different. It is the weirdest thing to me.
Yeah.
And see, the majority of you that are watching this video, you might actually be thinking, who's this fool trying to kid? He still looks like a man.
Yeah. Yeah. Still do.
But that's okay. Go right ahead. Think that all you want to. It's what makes me happy that matters. What makes me happy and feel good is what matters. What you all think, I value what you think to a certain extent as my friends, as family, and things, but for the most part, this is me. This has always been.
Yikes. See, again, that there's again that selfishness that comes out in a trans person, because there is a certain level of truth that you shouldn't live your life worried about what other people think about you, right? You're not living your life for other people, you're living your life for yourself, and what makes you happiest is most important. However, we cannot ignore the fact that there are people affected by this, okay? Parents who watch their kids transition, it's a very difficult, painful thing to watch. Parents question themselves. They have to ask themselves, what did I do that caused this? How did I not show up in my child's life that allowed them to hate themselves so much that they felt the need to transition? Parents are affected big time when their kids, even when their kids are adults and transition, because it defies everything they thought they knew. They thought they raised, in my case, a son their whole life, and now all of a sudden I'm throwing it in their face and defying what they thought they raised from a baby. So parents get affected, spouses really get affected. My wife and I just recently made a video about that, how affected spouses are by the whole thing, and of course the trans partner, who is so self-absorbed and self-centered and making the changes happen for themselves, tends to forget that they even have a partner. I mean, you don't forget you have a partner, obviously, but you definitely don't notice their needs nearly as much. You're too focused on your next appointment, your next surgery, your next check or box that's going to get checked off of the path to full transition. And your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, whatever, gets really affected when you decide to transition. Your kids that... I have a stepdaughter that has watched me transition and then detransition, and yes, it's made her very versatile in her experiences of the world, and that's cool, but what about the confusion it caused her? What about the discomfort and the weirdness and her having to answer to her friends, oh, is that your dad or your mom or what? And she's had those questions about me, about what was happening with me. So when you transition, it's not all about you. Those of us who identified as trans like to feel like it is all about us, and we make it all about us, and we like to think we're aware of people around us, but really we're not. It's something that is so all-consuming of everything you are that you can't pay attention enough to those around you, and you end up taking things away from people in order to serve yourself and be happy. And again, if you could change the internal dialogue and become happy with yourself inside, you wouldn't have to put everyone around you and yourself through that whole mess. Continuing.
Me. This is not a new thing. The only new thing is me finally getting to express who I've always been. That's what I want you to understand. If you learn nothing else from me, I want you to learn that trans people have always been this way. It's just that we're finally in a place in our lives where we can be ourselves, not be someone else. It is not about being someone else. I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. I'm trying to be myself.
That's what you think.
I am being myself. This is me.
No, this
will
is
be me for the rest of my existence. My family members and things.
Now see, this is where, again, when people tell me, oh, you weren't really trans. Why did I go through what I went through? Why did I have the surgery I had if I wasn't really trans? You just heard that. This is how I'm going to be forever. I honestly believed that. And that's why other trans people who are seeking affirmative care and things, I get it. You honestly believe with everything you are that this is the reality. This is who you are. I get that. But it's a delusion. I'm sorry to say that. It isn't a delusion. I was in a huge delusion for a long time. That's what it is. It's a belief. And it's a delusion that, if you're an adult, it's your right to live in that delusion. It's your right to present as female if you want to. But where I would draw the line is when you claim to actually be female and therefore claim that you belong in spaces that are female spaces, because you are not really female. You are, in your mind, you are really female, but your body is biologically male, and had you had a different set of circumstances that you grew up with, your mind would also be male. Your mind would match your body if you did not have the particular set of sequential experiences that you had that programmed into you the perspectives that caused you to arrive where you are now. Even if that happened when you were like 4 years old, you can develop beliefs at a very young age, and I did. At age 4 is about when I realized I think I want to be a girl. I feel like I'm a girl. I don't even know what all happened over the course of time to cause me to arrive at the belief that I was legitimately a girl in a boy's body. I don't know. I go back and I think about it and try to sort it out, but really the goal is being present now in this life. Now that I'm back to living as a man, I can actually live in the present and be happy with who I am and not worry about the future and becoming something different. It's amazing. Continuing.
You don't accept this? I need you to. I need you to accept it.
Please, please accept me.
Know that it's not going away. It's not.
It's not going away.
It's not going to go away. No matter how much you try to convince me that it's wrong, that it's not right, that it's weird, it's not going away.
Till October of 2023.
Because it can't. This is what brings me happiness. The ultimate happiness. The best happiness I have ever experienced in my life.
Ooh, this makes me
able to experience now that I'm finally able to be myself.
Makes me want to take this video down.
That is not changing. That is
Yikes.
not going away. It is not going to go away.
Oh, but it did.
No matter how much you try, no matter how much you deny it, no matter how much you... It's not going anywhere.
Poor little child Laurel.
You can choose to love me for who I am, love me for the new... See, even I make that mistake sometimes. I was about to say love me for the new me.
The new me.
It's not the new me. It's the same me that has always existed.
In your internal dialogue.
Hopefully eventually sounding a little different too. If I were to reach a point where I actually legitimately can pass as a female, which I know I can't right now.
No.
I think I look decent, but I know that I don't pass. And a lot of people look at a trans person and they say,
what do they say?
Trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We are being ourselves.
Who you think you are.
We are doing what makes us happy.
What we think makes us happy.
It all you want to. The nice thing is I don't care anymore. I let that keep me from doing it for a very long time. No more.
No more.
I want to be me. I want the freedom of being me and being happy. And I'm very, very lucky and thankful to have a wife and daughter who are very supportive, very loving, and are still with me.
Had no choice, really.
Being married to what you thought was the man of your dreams, and all of a sudden the man of your dreams tells you, hate to tell you this, but I'm not really a man. I may look like one, I may have the parts, but it's not really me, and I can't hold it in anymore. And that's what happened to me. I was living my life, holding it in, just living the life like the guy that I was expected to be.
Because you were.
And it got to a point where it was just too hard I just couldn't do it anymore.
Can't do it.
You gotta understand, it causes some seriously damaging psychological trauma.
Yeah. Beliefs can do that.
Every day be drawn towards things that you can't be a part of. Every day be drawn to clothing that you just know you can't wear it.
That's life.
Everybody's gonna think you're weird. So to finally reach the point where I've reached recently, where I just don't care. It is amazing. And it finally allows me to be myself and be comfortable and happy. Don't get me wrong, I still have issues when I go out in public looking like this, and I go in a certain store, depending on who's in the store. For the most part, I've been amazed that I've been received very well.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I go in the store, walk up with whatever I'm purchasing, set it on the counter. I just talk like normal to the person with this voice. I don't try to talk higher because I haven't reached a point where I can do it good yet, to where I can sound female, and so I don't want to try.
Sound female?
I don't want to look like I'm trying. I want to sound feminine when I talk.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think this person is dressed like a woman trying to sound like a woman. He's clearly a man. This is clearly a man standing here in front of me. So I still struggle with those sometimes. I sit outside in my car looking at the business, watching the people go in. How's that person likely to judge me?
Am I safe?
Likely to say anything to me?
They gonna beat me up?
Okay, looks like it's safe to go in. I make a run for the door, go in, and then someone else comes in through the door that I probably wouldn't have gone in had I seen them go in before me.
It's not a fun way to live.
So at the same time, I tell you I don't care. I really still do. I really do still care a lot.
A lot.
It's sad. It's hard to get over. But for the most part, I don't care. For the most part, I go out like this in public, and I don't care. I have those moments where I do care, where it causes problem, but for the most part, I just don't care.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, right. I just heard you tell about how much you do care.
Because I do. I did.
So yes, this is me. This has always been me.
No.
I just looked a little different my whole life because that evil D word, testosterone. hate testosterone with a passion.
Oh, I love testosterone now.
Love estrogen. That's some good stuff.
Poison in a male body.
Anything that can make a person feel good about themselves and be happy, even if it goes against what other people think is the norm, even if it goes against what other people think is moral. There are a lot of people who think this is just immoral and wrong.
Yeah.
Those people you just can't convince. I'm not even going to try to convince them. There's no hope.
Because I couldn't be
The only
convinced.
people that I want to make these videos for are those of you who already maybe thinking about things, maybe thinking, what's it mean to be transgender? Maybe just a legitimate thing.
Isn't that interesting? And now here I am making videos the exact opposite, to help those who are struggling with gender identity issues to realize that it is a belief that can change. And in that video I was trying to claim it is not a belief, that it is something you're born with. Yikes. See, people change. People can absolutely change. You can't just assume that once somebody displays a certain characteristic or personality trait that that's going to be the way they are forever. That's why I don't just write people off. If someone does something that upsets me, I know there was a lot that went into them making that decision to do that thing. And for me to just write them off is throwing away huge potential of all the rest of who they could be. People are beautiful, amazing beings. It's just, we all have our own particular unique experiences that make us each turn into our very unique identity and personality. Let's continue.
It is. It is a legitimate thing. Even if it is a mental illness, which it's not.
It is,
even if
though.
It was.
It is.
Let me explain something to you. Even if it was a mental illness,
What?
it's something that causes a lot of people to kill themselves.
Well,
And I could explain to you why.
yeah.
When you are forced to live a lie your whole life, when you're forced to live something that you're not, you don't want to live that life. It is an existence you don't want to have.
Exactly.
You don't want to live that way. And when you're constantly having to fight it,
Why are
eventually
you?
reach a point. I haven't. I love my life. I don't want to kill myself. Even if I...
Oh, but I have wanted to many times. See, before I transitioned, I had a lot of suicidal thoughts. Right as I was coming up time to have surgery, I even had the thought that if something happens and I can't have the surgery, I can't go on living. It was that serious. I felt like I had to do it. Like there was no other choice but to have gender reassignment surgery or I couldn't go on living. It was a dark place I was in. And then after I transitioned, that didn't fix anything. I still had plenty of times where I felt like such a failure and had all this self-esteem issues that I had a lot of suicidal thoughts then too. And when I detransitioned, then I'm like, well, now I'm a man living in the world without a penis. Now I need to kill myself too. Suicidal ideation it's not uncommon in people who struggle with gender identity issues. That's one of the reasons that people claim that trans affirming care is so vital and necessary is because it saves lives. And therefore, many people claim that those of us who have detransitioned and are telling our stories and are telling the truth about gender identity, they are afraid that we're going to cause death by literally convincing the system to not give people trans affirming care. And really, we actually do want that. We want the system not to just hand out hormones like candy to kids. We want to see people who have gender reassignment surgery, if that is really legitimately what they want in their life. We want to see people who actually have the right help and assistance to get there in a way that won't leave them with regrets later like what I had. Because even though you hear me on this video, I was so convinced that I was legitimately female, that I was born that way, and that having the surgery was the only option. It was the only option to align my body with the way I felt inside. And because that is the mentality of most trans people who reach that point of wanting surgery, there's no convincing them otherwise. The only thing you can do is help a trans person realize that they're lovable for who they are, to such an extent that they don't desire to change who they are anymore. And how do you do that? You can't just tell someone, hey, you're worthy of love, you should just love yourself the way you are. They won't accept that. I wouldn't have accepted that. There's only a couple minutes left here, let's see.
I couldn't do this, but this is what makes me happy. This makes me happy. This makes me feel good.
For a time.
And that's what's most important. Everybody should just want everybody else to be happy. Even if it goes against what they think is normal or right. You should just want your fellow human being to be happy. So, if you know someone who is transgender, if you have a kid that identifies as a different gender, or non-binary, or gay, or whatever it is, don't fight it. The more you fight it, the more damage you're causing that poor person.
Yikes.
To you, it feels justified to fight it. To you,
Okay, let me take that back. Let me take that back. Absolutely fight it, okay? But don't fight it in a hateful way. Don't fight it in a way that makes your kids or your loved ones feel hated, because that's the whole thing that caused it in the first place, right? The whole reason a person identifies as trans is because they could not accept themselves the way they were born, and they have to change themselves. And the reason for that is a belief that was caused by circumstances they went through in the past, right? So if your child comes to you and tells you, hey, I feel like I'm really a girl if they were born a boy, or if your daughter comes to you and says, hey, I think I'm really a girl, take a deep breath. Don't panic, because if you panic in this situation, it will cause you to say some things that will exacerbate the problem. Just take a deep breath, ground yourself, take care of yourself first, because you need to be in a place. You need to be in a safe place to handle this. Let yourself breathe about it, and then lovingly listen to your child. Listen to what they have to say. Honestly, hear them with your heart. Hear them. Hear what their concerns are. Because there's a reason that they're having this struggle, that they're feeling like they can't be who they were born as. There was something that they were exposed to, something they heard, saw, and it's never just one thing. It's a compounded, complex situation that builds a gender identity over the formative years of a child's life. And so if your child comes to you and says, hey, I think I'm trans, don't just jump on the affirmative bandwagon, please, because the reality is that most likely, well, yes, it 99% of the time will be temporary. All kids have struggles. All kids struggle to feel safe and confident in who they are, in their lives. All teenagers especially struggle. Do you find it odd at all that it is teenagers that are mostly coming out as trans? Teenagers are the ones that are struggling with so much. I've always said it's so happy to me when a teenager actually makes it to adulthood, because teenagers are dealing with a lot. They're facing a lot in this world. Their peers, they're constantly judged. They're judging themselves. Their brains are not fully formed yet, so they're perceiving things in the world that they can't really make sense of. They don't have a concept of long-term consequences to their long-term consequences of their actions. They just don't. And so even if a teenager comes to you and tells you they're trans, don't just believe it. Don't just go along with it. Don't immediately say, oh no, you're not. Don't deny them either, because if they come to you with this belief, it has at this point become probably a legitimate belief to them. They've seen enough, they've been exposed to enough at school and on the internet that they have established that they're pretty sure this is really who they are. And they're just here to tell you that, and they finally got up the guts to tell you that. And if you respond in any way that is not just open-hearted and loving, they will detect that. They will detect that you have a problem with them presenting as trans, and then they will pull further away from you and be even less prone to hearing your wisdom and your loving guidance as their parent. It's a tough situation to be in. My wife and I were just talking to someone else who has a trans child, and we see this happen, and I really feel for those of you parents of kids who claim they are trans, because you've got quite the struggle to deal with. Even if transitioning makes your child happy for now, it will be temporary. They eventually will learn that they still struggle with issues on the inside. They still don't love themselves. Transitioning doesn't make you love yourself. Transitioning just kind of changes things about your appearance that make you think you're aligning with who you think you are, and therefore you think you will love yourself more, but that's not how it works. Let me see what else we say here in the last couple minutes.
you feel like it's wrong for them to be gay or trans or whatever. You feel like they should identify with whatever they were born as. But to them it is very real. To them, you are only fighting something that is never going to change.
Yep.
And it feels hopeless to the person who's experiencing that.
Very hopeless.
Really, what is it affecting you as the person that doesn't like it? If you're a person that doesn't like the fact that there's people like me that dress up like this to feel better about ourselves, if you're that kind of person, you're likely never going to fully understand it. But what does it really hurt you? What does it really affect you? I know you're thinking, well, it affects me when I have to go out in public and I see you weirdos dressed up like women when you're really men.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect you.
That does affect
That's just
people.
a feeling you're experiencing because of your own internal feelings on the matter.
It makes people
It's
uncomfortable.
not really legitimately affecting you. So don't let it. Just live your life. Let us live our lives. Please. Please. Just let us be happy and live our lives and don't fight it. Because it will never change. It is not going to change. It's not going anywhere. This is how we are. This is who we are. I hate to say it, but get over it. Get used to it.
Oh, burn.
That goes for family members, for non-family members, people out in public, whatever. Get over it.
Get over
Just
it, people.
accept it. It's not going away. Thank you for listening. There will be more videos as I think of more thoughts. I've been doing blogs because I wasn't quite ready to show myself like this, even though I've been taking pictures. Pictures are different. Pictures, you don't hear my voice. And pictures, I can control the angle, make myself look more attractive, because when you still have a manly face like I do, there are certain angles that don't look good. Thank you. Be kind to your trans people. All we want is love. All we want is to be accepted for who we are. That's all we want. We just want to be able to live our lives, be happy, go to the store, go to amusement parks, whatever, dressed how we want to, just what makes us feel comfortable, appropriately, of course. That's all we want. Please just try to understand that. Try to understand. Thanks.
Well now, my dear sweet younger Laurel self from 6 years ago, my dear sweet confused self from 6 years ago, look at me now. It did change. Okay? You heard me say in that video many times how much I honestly believed I was born this way and it's never changing, and I had to believe that to justify doing what I did to my body. I had to say that to justify living the way I was and showing up in women's circles and women's spaces and thinking that I belonged there. I have a lot of love for those who welcomed me in the women's spaces as if I belonged there, but I now recognize I did not. I never did. It was a beautiful thing that they just welcomed me there, but I didn't belong in those places. I was born male. Will always be male in this physical life. That is my response to that video. My introduction video. Very first one is trans. I have a lot more videos that I think I'm going to do responses to because I say some... I used to be a pretty opinionated person. Now I try to remain curious. I am somewhat opinionated about this now because I just see the tragedy of it all. Tragedy of what's happening in our societies. And kids who are growing up unable to love themselves for who they are and they think they have to become something else, and they damage their bodies, and then they have to live for the rest of their lives with the tragic outcomes like I do. I love you all. Thank you for watching, and subscribe, push that bell to be notified of new videos. I will post more. This is quite the topic to talk about. Thank you. See you later.